All right, somebody asked about the lights on this van, so here it is. So custom switches that you can get done. I'll put a link if anybody asks me where I got these made. And what I like about these is they're really good quality. I've had these for about 6 years, hundreds of uses. And it, in case you forget which one it is, light bar is blind them. Never push is the rear bars. And as you can see, it's a red switch. And then the Deer Slayer is the one in front. So I'll give you a quick tour of how these look from the outside. So the light bar on top, I can control with either the switch up here or the remote. And the light bar is low profile, single row LEDs. So it minimizes the wind noise. If you have an air dam, that works even better, but these are just getting so insanely bright that you can see things that you literally could not see even with your HID or LED high beams. So, for off-road use only, don't get yourself busted. You're supposed to keep these things covered in California if it's over the bumper. But here's a few uses that I think people may not have considered with these light bars. So if you have a remote, you can make it on and off remotely, like from your campsite, if you're trying to just do some area lighting. But more importantly, or better yet, you can do flash patterns. So you can do some pretty obnoxious different patterns. You can adjust the rate of the flash. And I use these for bike races when I'm on the race crew because it provides a very useful warning for the drivers and other people around that there's a bike race coming. It's pretty hard to ignore. And then you also have an SOS option, which is Morse code, in case you're not aware. And that's going to be seen for potentially miles, right? So I have to be careful since there's people driving over the hill. I don't want them to get the wrong idea. But it can go a lot further when you have no communications, either because you're out of cell signal, there's no cell signal in your area. Lighting is one of the oldest forms of long distance communication. You look at ships and the semaphores, etc. So that's the light bar. Now you can turn it off from the remote or from the switch. So let's turn that off, and then here's the Deer Slayer. Now these are my favorite. So these are Vision X light cannons, probably about as big as you can go. Overkill is just the starting point for me. And what I like about the Vision X, there's a few things. First, you can change the beam color as well as the beam pattern by just removing the covers. And these are protective covers. These lights are about almost 8 years old, and they're in almost perfect condition still on the lens because I've always had them covered. You can get amber, you can get other colors, you can get different light patterns. So it's a pencil beam, which is a pencil beam by default, or the flood, or you can just get a blackout cover, which is technically DOT requirement, at least for California, because they're above the bumper. These are painfully bright. If you look right into it, it's probably going to mess up the shutter on this camera if I do that. But these are kind of the Euro flood pattern. So what it does is provides kind of a hybrid wide spread. And if you take off the cover, you can see that it's just a pencil beam. It's just a single, very tight spot. And that is just painfully bright if you look into it. It's like looking into the sun. So yeah, it's hard to capture how just painfully bright that is on the camera. I don't know if that's going to come through. So my camera's quickly adjusting. Now another cool but totally pointless feature, but totally cool, is that the Vision X covers glow in the dark. So after you've had these on for a minute, check it out. Definitely not needed, but really cool if you're an LED addict like I am. So you can definitely go overboard, as I tend to do on everything. And then the rear is never push. Now this is probably the most utilitarian of the lights. And this is because when you're camping, you have just, an area you want to light up, tailgating, an event, you have your easy up, etc. You don't have to bring an external light source. These are LED, they'll run almost all night basically. And Vision X is great. If you can get Rigid or Baja, those are the best, I think. But Vision X is fantastic as well. And you can just see it's really convenient, very bright. You can even use it for video production. So you can imagine that if you're just standing here and you have these overhead lights, it's pretty great for just recording yourself with a perfect black backdrop. These also have a remote control, which is very useful for the reasons I mentioned for the front. If you're doing like race support and you want just a hazard light, warning, this is a lot more visible than your hazard lights would be. And again, you can do the SOS pattern if you hit the bottom button on the remote. So, technically, worst case scenario, this maybe could save your life. If you're stranded, if there's a major emergency, it just sends a message far further than standing on the side of the road, especially at night. It works far better at night than it does during the day, obviously. So the remote is pretty cool. You can just take it to your campsite as you need the light. As you don't need the light, turn it on or off. If you have a bike, I use the lights all the time the night before a bike race, before an event, so I can wrench on the bike as a Kuat rack, because when you swivel it over, you have your bike stand that can come out here, or you can just work on the bike here or your dirt bike, and you have plenty of light. You don't have to have your flashlight, your headlamp. And then when you're done, assuming your bike is off the rack, you can just fold it up, turn the lights off, and your whole workstation is put away in less than 10 seconds. So lighting, I'm pretty obsessed. I could show you one other thing beyond the lights, and that is this PA system where I've added some LED inside, because on this year Sprinter, these lights are just dormant. There's no bulb in there, so I added the LED flasher, and now you have an additional warning light all the way around. If you don't want to use the overhead LEDs, this is just like you see on construction vehicles, just a flasher all around, combined with a PA for warning with the microphone and megaphone. So I hope you enjoyed my little introduction of my stupid bright lights. And if you're anything like me, you can never go too bright. All right, so that's how it is. Looking at the front, you can see the back, and then walking around. Yeah. What do you think? Let me know in the comments if I have impressed you or if I am just a fool. I've always been obsessed with lights ever since I was a kid. I always wanted to ask the driver of those trucks that always had the KC lights on top, like, can you turn them on? Can I just see them? And sometimes they would. Most of the time they would just look at me, and I could tell they hated kids. And if they didn't, they probably did because of that. All right, that's my rig.